In Cypress Creek, Texas, where the stars at night shine bright over sprawling ranchlands, a dark and chilling crime shattered the town's peace. On the 7th of February, 2011, the frozen body of 42-year-old State Trooper James Redd was discovered in a ditch along Highway 84. His death sent shockwaves through the small Texas community, where James had been a beloved father, husband, and officer. But what no one knew then was that his murder would unravel a tale of infidelity, betrayal, and corruption that went straight to the heart of the Cypress Creek Highway Patrol. Cypress Creek wasn't a place where crimes like this happened. The police force was a source of pride, and the community trusted its officer. James Redd was more than just a badge. He was a neighbor, a friend, and a symbol of integrity. But behind the scenes, secrets. James was entangled in an affair with Tamara Carter, the wife of his commanding officer, Captain Marcus Carter. The love triangle ignited a storm of jealousy and rage that culminated in. Stay with us as we unravel the shocking case of Officer James Redd's murder. From forbidden love to deadly confrontation, this story will expose the dark side of human emotions in ways you won't forget. Be sure to subscribe to True Crime by Sophia for more gripping stories like this. James Redd was the kind of man people trusted instinctively. At 42 years old, he had spent nearly 2 decades with the Texas Highway Patrol, serving his community with a quiet dignity. He wasn't flashy or loud, but his steady presence made him a cornerstone of Cypress Creek. As a husband and father of 2, James seemed to have a fulfilling life, but beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. His long hours on patrol had taken a toll on his marriage, and though his wife, Vanessa, remained supportive, the emotional distance between them was growing. Marcus Carter, on the other hand, was a larger-than-life figure in Cypress Creek. As the captain of the local patrol division, Marcus had built a reputation for being strict but fair. Officers under his command respected him, and his name was well regarded throughout the Texas Highway Patrol. To the public, Marcus and his wife Tamara appeared to have the perfect marriage. Tamara, with her radiant smile and effortless charm, was the ideal complement to Marcus's stern demeanor, but their polished exterior concealed deep fracture. Marcus's dedication to his career often left Tamara feeling neglected and unseen. Tamara Carter had her own story. At 37, she was at a crossroads in her life. Her days were filled with social engagements, charity work, and maintaining the facade of a perfect marriage. But she craved something more, something that made her feel alive again. When she met James Redd at a patrol division charity gala in Austin in October 2010, her life took an unexpected turn. The gala was one of those grand Southern affairs, string lights draped over oak trees, the smell of barbecue wafting through the air, and live country music setting the tone. James and Tamara's first conversation started innocently enough. They talked about the demands of police work, the challenges of raising a family, and life in Cypress Creek. But there was an unspoken connection between them, a spark neither could ignore. That night would be the beginning of a relationship that spiraled out of control. In the weeks that followed, James and Tamara's paths continued to cross. What began as polite conversations grew into something more intimate. Tamara felt seen and valued in a way she hadn't in years. For James, Tamara represented an escape from the pressures of his life, a reminder that there was more to him than just his badge. By November 2010, the two had crossed a line. Their affair was a secret, but it didn't stay hidden for long. It was late December 2010 when Marcus Carter began to notice a change in Tamara. She had become more distant. Her phone always clutched in her hand, and her late-night outings more frequent. Marcus wasn't a man who ignored his instincts. Over the years, he had learned to read people body language, tone, and the subtle shifts that often revealed a hidden truth. He began paying closer attention, and what he found confirmed his worst fear. One night, while Tamara was in the shower, Marcus picked up her phone. What he saw left him cold. Messages from James Redd. Some were flirtatious, others more explicit, and all of them confirmed the affair. Marcus's heart pounded as he scrolled through the evidence. His mind raced with anger, humiliation, and a burning need to take control of the situation. But instead of confronting Tamara, he decided to gather more evidence. In early January 2011, Marcus hired a private investigator to follow Tamara. Within days, the investigator provided photos of Tamara meeting James in secluded locations, their interactions unmistakably intimate. Marcus kept this information to himself, letting his anger simmer while he devised a plan. The tipping point came at the Cypress Creek New Year's Eve party. The event was a community tradition held at the town's civic center. Marcus, Tamara, and James were all in attendance. To the casual observer, everything seemed normal. Marcus and James exchanged polite words. Tamara mingled effortlessly, and the community celebrated together. But Marcus watched them closely, his eyes narrowing every time they shared a glance. By the time the clock struck midnight, Marcus had made up his mind James had to pay for his betrayal. By mid-January 2011, Marcus Carter's rage had reached a boiling point. The man he had mentored, worked beside, and trusted had not only betrayed him, but tarnished the image of authority and respect he had carefully cultivated in Cypress. Yet Marcus, ever the tactician, knew better than to lash out impulsively. He needed a plan that would ensure James Red suffered the consequences of his actions without implicating himself. James, meanwhile, was unaware of how deeply Marcus's anger had festered. He had been carrying the weight of the affair with Tamara, torn between guilt and the thrill of their secret relationship. Vanessa, James's wife, had noticed his distant behavior but attributed it to the stress of the job. James convinced himself that he could keep his personal life and career separate, unaware that Marcus was carefully laying a trap. It all came to a head on the 30th of January, 2011. Marcus called James under the guise of discussing a potential promotion. Marcus framed it as a casual, private meeting to discuss future opportunities within the Texas Highway Patrol. He suggested they meet at his hunting cabin, located deep in the Texas Hill Country, a secluded spot surrounded by dense woods and miles from the nearest road. James, eager to smooth over any professional tensions and maintain a semblance of normalcy, agreed. The meeting was set for the evening of the 1st of February, 2011. As James drove up the long gravel driveway to the cabin, he couldn't shake a sense of unease. The air was bitterly cold, and the faint glow of the cabin's lights flickered through the trees. Marcus greeted James at the door, his demeanor calm but his eyes betraying the storm within. Inside, the tension was palpable. The cabin was sparsely lit, the crackling fire offering little warmth to the icy atmosphere. Marcus wasted no time confronting James. He laid out the evidence of the affair texts, photographs, and the investigator's report. James, cornered and ashamed, tried to explain himself, but his words only stoked Marcus's fury. What kind of man does this? To his captain? To his brother in arms? Marcus's voice was low, simmering with barely contained rage. James tried to defuse the situation. It was a mistake, Marcus. I never meant to hurt anyone. But Marcus wasn't looking for an apology. The conversation escalated into a shouting match. Accusations flying as years of frustration, betrayal, and anger boiled over. Then it happened. In a fit of rage, Marcus lunged at James, grabbing the Glock holstered at James's side. The first shot rang out, hitting James in the chest. He stumbled back, his face a mask of shock and pain. Marcus fired again. The second bullet, striking James in the abdomen. As James fell to the floor, gasping for air, Marcus delivered the final shot to his back. The room fell silent, save for the crackle of the fire and the shallow, fading breaths of the man who had once been his friend. For a moment, Marcus stood frozen, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. He stared at James's lifeless body, blood pooling on the cabin floor. But Marcus was a man who thrived on control, and his training kicked in. He began methodically staging the scene, to look like a robbery gone wrong. He wiped his fingerprints from the gun and scattered items around the cabin to suggest Finally, he loaded James's body into the back of James's patrol car and drove to a remote stretch of Highway 84. Marcus chose the ditch carefully, ensuring it was far enough from the cabin to misdirect any investigation. He positioned the body to look hastily discarded and left James's Glock nearby, making it appear as though he had been attacked while on duty. By the time Marcus returned to the cabin, the adrenaline had worn off, replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. He cleaned up the remaining evidence and drove home as if nothing had happened. 3 days later, on the morning of the 7th of February, 2011, a passing motorist noticed the abandoned patrol car partially hidden behind a snowbank along Highway 84. Something about its positioning felt off. As the driver slowed and stepped out of his vehicle, he made the grim discovery of James Redd's frozen body in the ditch. The quiet town of Cypress Creek would never be the same. The discovery of James Redd's body sent shockwaves through the community. For the Cypress Creek Highway Patrol, it was a personal blow. James wasn't just a colleague, he was a friend, a trusted officer, and a symbol of the department's integrity. The department vowed to find the perpetrator, enlisting the help of the Texas Rangers. At first, the investigation focused on James's professional life. Detectives considered whether his murder might be linked to a recent drug bust. James had been instrumental in dismantling a major narcotics operation, and retaliation wasn't unheard of. But as investigators dug deeper, the evidence began pointing in a different direction. It was Marcus's own arrogance that led to his undoing. Cell phone tower data placed him near the cabin on the night of James's disappearance, contradicting his alibi. When detectives searched the cabin, they found faint traces of blood in the cracks of the wooden floor and a torn photograph of Tamara and James. The photograph had been ripped in half, a chilling sign of Marcus's rage. As the Texas Rangers and local investigators pieced together the evidence, the focus of the investigation shifted firmly onto Captain Marcus Carter. Detectives found inconsistencies in his alibi, and the forensic evidence collected from the cabin painted a damning picture. Blood spatter patterns matched James Redd's wounds, and the torn photograph suggested a personal motive rather than a professional vendetta. Marcus's calm and confident demeanor during initial questioning began to crack under scrutiny. On the 10th of February, 2011, Marcus was brought in for formal questioning. He maintained his innocence, claiming that James had visited his cabin to discuss departmental matters but had left in good spirits. Yet, as investigators confronted him with mounting evidential phone data, the blood at the cabin, and witness reports of his volatile behavior, Marcus's story began to falter. The key breakthrough came when detectives obtained Tamara Carter's testimony. On the 15th of February, 2011, Tamara, visibly shaken but composed, admitted to her affair with James Redd. Her statement provided investigators with the motive they needed: Marcus's jealousy and his desire to maintain control over his crumbling marriage and reputation. Tamara also described Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior in the weeks leading up to the murder, painting a picture of a man unraveling under the weight of betrayal. The forensic analysis sealed Marcus's fate. Ballistics testing confirmed that the bullets that killed James had been fired from his own Glock. Even more damning, a partial fingerprint matching Marcus's was found on the trigger guard. With this conclusive evidence, Marcus Carter was arrested on the 20th of February, 2011, and charged with first-degree murder. The trial of Marcus Carter began on the 1st of March, 2012, and captivated the Cypress Creek community. The courtroom was packed with reporters, townspeople, and members of the Texas Highway Patrol. For many, it was unthinkable that a man like Marcus, decorated, respected, and admired, could be capable of such a heinous act. Yet, the prosecution laid out a compelling case that left little room for doubt. Prosecutors portrayed Marcus as a man consumed by jealousy and pride. They argued that his meticulous planning and the staged crime scene demonstrated premeditation. Witnesses, including Tamara, testified about Marcus's temper and his growing obsession with the affair. The prosecution presented forensic evidence that tied Marcus to the murder scene, including the blood spatter, the torn photograph, and his fingerprint on the weapon. Marcus's defense team attempted to paint a different picture. They claimed the murder was a tragic accident, the result of a heated argument that spiraled out of control. They leaned heavily on Marcus's spotless record and decades of service, portraying him as a man pushed to the brink by betrayal. They also questioned Tamara's credibility, suggesting she had manipulated both men to serve her own interests. But the evidence was undeniable. The prosecution highlighted Marcus's deliberate actions, luring James to the cabin under false pretenses, staging the crime scene, and disposing of the body. They argued that these were not the actions of a man acting in the heat of the moment, but of someone who had planned to exact revenge. The emotional toll of the trial was evident. Vanessa Red, James's widow, sat silently in the gallery, clutching a photograph of her husband. Tamara, now estranged from Marcus, appeared weary and remorseful as she recounted the affair and its consequences. Marcus himself remained stoic throughout. Though his once commanding presence seemed diminished, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the evidence against him. After 3 weeks of testimony and just 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Marcus Carter was found guilty of first-degree murder. On the 22nd of March, 2012, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure to the Red family, but left scars that would never fully heal. Vanessa, devastated by the loss of her husband, faced the dual burden of grieving James's death and grappling with the betrayal of his affair. In the months following the trial, Vanessa made the difficult decision to leave Cypress Creek, seeking a fresh start for herself and her children in Houston. She eventually found solace in writing, channeling her grief into a memoir that became a powerful testament to resilience and forgiveness. For Tamara Carter, the aftermath was equally devastating. She filed for divorce from Marcus shortly after his arrest and left Cypress Creek to escape the relentless scrutiny of the community. Haunted by guilt and regret, Tamara dedicated herself to helping others, volunteering at shelters for victims of domestic abuse. Over time, she opened a counseling center in Austin, providing support for women navigating toxic relationships and emotional trauma. Though she worked tirelessly to rebuild her life, the shadow of her choices lingered. The Cypress Creek Highway Patrol was left to pick up the pieces. The scandal rocked the department, tarnishing its reputation and shaking the community's trust. New leadership was brought in, and a series of reforms were implemented to address the internal failings that allowed the tragedy to unfold. Ethics training, mental health resources, and greater oversight became cornerstones of the department's efforts to rebuild. In Cypress Creek, the events of 2011 and 2012 became a somber chapter in the town's history. Once a symbol of unity and pride, the Highway Patrol now served as a reminder of the fragility of trust and the destructive power of unchecked emotions. For the residents, the scars of the tragedy lingered, though life slowly returned to normal. James Red's memory was honored with a plaque at the patrol headquarters, a testament to his service and sacrifice. But his story also served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the human flaws that can unravel even the strongest bonds. Stay tuned for more gripping stories.